Our next speaker, and I love the topic, making communication accessible for all. As I said, I'm really impressed about how concerned all of the programmers are about accessibility. That's so amazing. The inclusivity of everything. Y'all are just, we really need to take your ideas and put it out into the rest of the world. Okay, so you really just gonna sit there and drink from a Deadpool mug, like I can't see you. All right, yeah, I saw you. That's cool. That's all right. All righty, everyone. And I had to ask about your name, and I'm going to say it right. Ready? Everyone, bang your hands together for Dijah McDonald. What?
Oh, thank you. That's my name.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, cool. Here, I'm going to start this Google slide. I haven't used Zoom as a person on the other side presenting, so this is a little bit of a struggle. Okay, cool. One sec, guys. That moment when you're trying to actually present and your laptop decides to not do the thing. Cool. Okay, so hello everyone. Today I'm going to be discussing making communication accessible, because as someone that is applying to jobs and has ADHD and some other issues, a lot of things are very inaccessible, like all the time. It's very frustrating, and I know I'm not the only person, and you don't even have to have something like ADHD or something like that sort for it to be annoying. So firstly, what I'm going to talk about first, I'm going to talk about me, who Dijah is, defining accessibility, because I feel like it varies, like the definition varies from person to person a lot, which seems to cause confusion, and then some examples of some stuff that has been frustrating me and I know must frustrate others, and then what could change, and then the end. So firstly, I am Dijah. I'm a front-end developer. I use a lot of React. I used to be an art major. That's a talk for another time. And went to computer science. I have ADHD. And okay, cool. I have ADHD, which I talk a lot on Twitter. If you want to follow me on Twitter, at Dijah. And I have a very cute dog named Chocolate. She's wonderful and she likes cuddles. I love her. She's 1 year old. 1 year old, whatever. So accessibility, the degree to which a device, service, product, or environment is available to as many people as possible. Now, I think a lot of people, when they hear accessibility, they think about like just having subtitles, like what right now is at the bottom of the screen, or not having something that's very difficult to read on a screen, because that's frustrating for anyone, but especially if you have issues with vision. But accessibility can also be like offering more options to someone during an interview process. It can mean not doing something verbally and instead doing something written. Like, it can vary, and it's not just about a product. It's not just about something I'm going to use. It can be about the experience. It can be just talking one-on-one, not necessarily like doing a big old talk. Like, it varies. So firstly, for example, I've been using doing a lot of technical interviews. In a lot of technical interviews, either on a phone call or a video phone call, I have people asking me a lot of technical questions with code, and it's like, ooh, I can code, but I need visuals. I've always been that way. I have this thing called auditory processing disorder. That means I can hear a bunch of stuff in my head. I don't know what's being said. I speak English. We can be speaking English. That doesn't mean I'm going to be able to process it. So that's nice. If I'm being insulted, it's like, cool, this isn't going to affect me because I don't know what you're saying right now anyway. But if I'm doing a technical interview and it's like I'm hearing a lot of stuff and hearing stuff I actually do know, but because of how it's being presented, I'm going to be very confused. That's not ideal, because instead of it looking like, oh, maybe she just needs a different option, I'm sure most of the time it's going to look like, okay, this girl doesn't know what she's talking about. Very frustrating, because it's not something I control, but also it's like I don't necessarily know how I can get an accommodation for that. And it can be frustrating to even bring it up like on the spot, because a lot of times you don't know what's going to happen in that kind of situation until it actually happens. With another thing, with tutorials, either in person or on the internet or just any kind of instructional thing, a lot of things are super wordy. Like, a lot of people, instead of making something very simple, they add a lot of unnecessary words, big words, or even like uncommon words that people aren't going to use on a day-to-day basis. So it's like, why throw it in if you're trying to like teach it to the masses? Like, if most people don't know what this word means because it's kind of bougie and unnecessary, why add it? And it's not just, another reason that can be an issue is because, like, if English isn't my first language, or even if it is and I speak other languages, like, context matters. Like, I might be able to speak English for my job and do that perfectly fine and have no issues in that kind of environment. But then if you throw in some other words, especially when I'm trying to learn something new, that can be really ostracizing and just awkward because it's like if you have to backtrack and be like, hey, I don't understand that, that wastes a lot of time and it's just very frustrating, especially if you're the only person that can't get it or doesn't understand it. And then other jargon and slang. So a lot of slang varies by region and not necessarily just by reason, by ethnicity, by different cultural experiences, by different college, like different words mean different things to different people. And a lot of people go into things expecting or thinking like, hey, we all have the same experiences. I'm a programmer, you're a programmer, we know the same things, we both have the same degree. That is not true. That has never been true. Like people still are individuals and we can't like assume that everyone knows the same thing all the time. And just generally too many assumptions, like, oops, like assuming that someone knows something just doesn't look at a lot of times. It's always better to ask a lot of questions because even if you assume like that I know all the same things as you because of, like I said, the same experiences of a degree or job, like it just adds a lot of unnecessary confusion. I took my ADHD meds like not too long ago, so I'm a little jittery. I feel that that extra burst right now. So, okay, why care? Very good question. I'm happy you asked. It wastes a lot of time. Like if there's a lot of miscommunication errors, or if I'm, getting a technical interview and it's like, hey, I need this accommodation. Even if I ask for it, they might not be prepared for it. And it can take a lot of time to actually come up with a reasonable accommodation, actually implement it, and then fix the bugs with said implementation of the accommodation. Because realistically, things never work the first time, like me trying to set up the Zoom stuff because I was very confused. New things are difficult. And it's also very uncomfortable. Like I have celiac, and sometimes in some places, like I don't necessarily want to bring up that I have celiac. Like if there's not automatically an option, I don't want to explain to people, hey, why I can't eat the pasta that everyone else is eating. Like it's not always comfortable and it's not always necessary. And it can just be awkward because a lot of people either consciously or subconsciously might have different biases about literally anything out there you can name, from food to how you talk to certain slang. Like people associate certain things with other things. That was weird wording. But yeah, you can't control bias. Like it's gonna happen even if people have really good intentions. It's natural. And being included feels very nice. Like when there's options, when there's the option to be included or the option to choose a way of showing your technical abilities in a way that actually works for you, like it feels good. Like no one wants to be not only put on a spot, because we all know technical interviews are in no way comfortable or ideal, but it's like that's already stressful. So if you have like another issue, say ADHD or auditory processing disorder, like that's only going to compound all the issues. So yeah, when you don't have to go through all that, it feels amazing. Having options when you're used to never having options is always going to feel amazing. Feeling it's going to make people feel included instead of excluded, especially when a lot of us are very much used to being excluded or ostracized for whatever reason in society. So, what can change? Wonderful question. I'm happy you asked. Being patient is something I think a lot of people kind of overlook. Things take time. Like sometimes you need to, when you meet someone new or you talk to someone new, whether it's in an interview or even in a meeting, like a new employee or something, like getting to know them and getting to know like how they operate, how they speak, not necessarily just like jargon or like exact words, but like if they don't sound like really peppy all the time, that doesn't mean like they're uncomfortable. It doesn't mean they're mad, and it doesn't mean like they're not trying. It could just mean they don't emote the same way as you. And a lot of people associate certain behaviors, certain words, certain whatever with a lot of negative things, when a lot of things are realistically just neutral, like, oh, nothing's wrong. I just sound like this. Like even I sometimes sound like very chill. It doesn't mean I'm not engaged. It doesn't mean I don't care. It just means that is who I am as a person, and taking the time to be patient with things like that's very important. Asking questions. A lot of people don't ask questions. I think like on and offline, I noticed a lot of people's like, hey, I don't know what exactly you meant by that, but I'm going to assume the absolute worst about this one thing, which I understand. That's a very human like tendency. I've done it myself, obviously, as a fellow human, but like taking time to ask questions when you either don't understand whatever, or if you're just confused about certain accommodations, like when someone's explaining what exactly they need, like asking questions is good. Perceived intent isn't always intent. Someone's not necessarily trying to throw you off and look lazy if they ask for accommodation at the last minute. It can just mean they genuinely didn't know like an accommodation would be needed, because every company does different things when it comes to technical interviews. Just like in meetings, everyone has meetings differently. Everyone has different expectations of people, but with those expectations, you have to be able to look at people individually. And that can mean like looking at people with ADHD, looking at people with maybe vision issues, or even looking at people who aren't from America, if we're talking in the context of America, or don't speak English natively. Like there's a lot of different variables that can come into that. So asking questions when things aren't looking totally clear is very important and saves a lot of headaches later on. Having options is great. So with the example of the technical interviews, I think something I saw on Twitter the other day was people saying instead of putting someone on the spot for a technical interview, they're sending like all the questions ahead of time. Now that sounds ideal and wonderful for various reasons, because we all hate technical interviews, but like no one does their best work when they're on the spot and nervous. Like it's just uncomfortable. So that feeling and the errors that can come out of that are only going to be amplified if you have something like ADHD or autism spectrum disorder. There's just a lot of different examples of something that could affect that and make it worse for the individual. So having that option of sending things out ahead of time is wonderful, but also like not verbally asking certain questions like, hey, do you prefer me to verbally ask you this, or do you prefer for like a paper or written version? Like what works for you? Wording it like that is a lot better than, hey, do you need this accommodation? Because again, it's subconscious or conscious bias, but also it just takes away a lot of stress. The word accommodation itself, I feel like has a lot of negative connotations at times. So just automatically having options and I am freely to choose said options is a wonderful way to go about those things. Takes off the stress and planning ahead. So planning ahead with those options instead of like not planning for someone like maybe needing written directions or something instead of verbal, like on the spot when asked. It's better to consider like, hey, maybe weeks before you even interviewing people, going through and just looking at different options and how you can present information. While we want information obviously to be accessible to all, it's important to realize like people are always going to need different changes for different things. Just like with celiac, some people are always going to need different food. That's the reality of life. But just planning ahead and just assuming that someone's going to need something different from what you need can really set you apart, whether you're a manager or a team member or someone interviewing or just a random person on YouTube or some person in a talk on a conference on the internet trying to present to other people to show them why something matters. Like planning ahead for people that aren't like you can really make a huge difference to lots of people. Oh, wow, I went through that a lot quicker than I actually anticipated. But so, that was actually most of my talk. I didn't mean to go that fast. I'm very sorry if I actually spoke that quickly. I hope you guys get what I'm saying though. Like accessibility isn't necessarily some very confusing thing. You don't have to make a bunch of very specific, it's not just stuff with like fonts. It's not just stuff with colors. Just remembering that people do not have the same exact experiences as you and aren't the exact same as you can make a huge difference. So thank you. I'm very sorry for going through that so quickly. I did not mean to actually do that, but I hope you enjoyed it. Interesting. I guess one way I could have thought about this ahead of time was probably taking my time to recognize maybe I'm speaking too quickly for some people. Another way I could have made things more accessible, but everything is a learning experience. All you guys in the chat are so wonderful. I feel so appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.
You did great. You
Thank
did great.
You.
You know, and I'm gonna tell you something, because we gave us a couple of minutes. What you said resonated so much with me, even though I'm not, you know, wait, what's the correct word? Nerd. That's the word. For the computer people, my son, my precious, my only one child is on the spectrum. And something you talked about that happened to me. We were he was about 5 or 6. We were in a museum in Alabama, and he had a meltdown, complete and total meltdown. So it was time to leave. And a lady walked up and said, "Oh, we're spoiled, aren't we?" And I said, "We're autistic, but thanks for asking." And so what you talked about is like, don't assume.
Don't assume, yes.
The ability level of any, and it doesn't mean that if someone needs, as an educator, also I'm a 25-year plus teacher. As an educator, needing accommodations doesn't mean needing extra help. It means it doesn't have anything to do with your ability. It has to do with the way you see things and the way, like for me, if I could, all my tests would be on time. Do what you do. Do your thing. Eventually, LaFran's got to go home sooner or later, but you do your thing.
Do your thing.
So I really appreciated what you were saying, what you did, your presentation. Don't worry about no time or nothing like that. We got that. We got that.
Thank you. Bless you.
Oh, I got a blessing. Ha! Gant didn't get no blessings. Nah. Thank you. Thank you so much. You rock. Thank y'all.
Bless you. Thank you, guys.
I got 2 blessings. Yes.